See, the first thing you need to know is if at all they don't provide the name, it's okay. But age is also equally important. Clinical findings, if they give, that is very, very important. So apart from that, you first have to identify whether it's a red-free image, pseudo, or the autofluorescence, right? Which eye? If the disc is on the right, it's a right eye. Disc is left, it's left eye, right? Second thing, look for any arm retina delay. That is very, very important. Then you always have to comment on the fluorescein angiography phase wise. I always keep telling our fellows, never comment on the single FFA. If they provide you, if I am the examiner, I always try to give a little bit about phase wise, like give you on the arterial phase, venous phase, and the late venous phase, so that you can guess it more better. Then come on the anatomical, whether it's a choroidal, subretinal, or neurosensory. And the last thing you have to do is comment whether it's a hyper or a hypo. Most of the students, they directly jump on telling it's a hypofluorescence here, it's a hyperfluorescence here. No, that's not the way of describing a fundus fluorescein chart. And how you have to interpret, you have to scan through the macula first, then the major vascular arcades, then comes the disc, periphery, and then look for any pathognomic signs, if at all that fundus diagram or that fluorescein angiographic chart is showing to you. Now, look at this. This is the chart given to you. What will you tell about this? See here, you see the background choroidal flush, artery is not filled up, veins is not filled up, they are all empty, but you can see some artery filling there. So what is that? It's nothing but the artery filling in the choroidal flush is nothing but the cilioretinal artery. So this is the fundus angiogram of the right eye, and it is in the choroidal phase because you could not see any arterial filling of the dye or the venous filling of the dye, but definitely you can see one artery being filled up when there is a choroidal flush. So this is a choroidal flush phase where there is filling of the cilioretinal artery. Now coming to this, see here, I have kept you the sequential frames. So this is how it is better to predict. See here, early frames, middle frames, and the late frames. In the late frames, you can definitely see the leakage around here. And this leakage is nothing but it's falling in the flower petal appearance. So this is nothing but the OCT is also given you as a clue here, where you can see the cystoid spaces in the outer nuclear layer. So this is very much a case of cystoid macular edema, probably post Irwin gas or the post cataract surgery. Now coming to the next, what is this? This is the most commonly asked fluorescein angiography. You have the clinical picture here. You see the grayish appearance here. You can see here on the FR is definitely dull. Then when you go in through the fundus fluorescein angiography, you can see the arteries are almost filled. The veins are already filled. So it's almost in the mid or the late venous phase. And here you can see this is definitely a late phase. One second, I just try to put this on. Okay, so this is the late venous phase here. And in the late phase, you can see there is a small hyperfluorescence, but which is increasing in the later frames of the angiogram. So this is nothing but an ink blot pattern of CSCR. Now coming to this, what is this? Again, this is the fundus fluorescein angiographic picture of the right eye. This is definitely an FFA, not an ICG. Why about it? I'll come to it a little bit later. And then you can see a large area of hypofluorescence here. And then you can see some amount of hyperfluorescence which is emerging out like a smokestack. So there is nothing but a smokestack pattern of the CSCR, or it might also be called as the mushroom leak or the umbrella leak, whichever the examiner prefers. Now coming to the next. So what is this picture? See here, I'm giving you a sequential frame. So this is the first frame. And in case if you are tensed, if you do not know which phase of the angiogram it is, there is always a clue given here. Please see this. In the end of this, FA 0.02, FA 1.04. That means at which time this frame has been taken. Now you see there is increase in the hyperfluorescence of these dotted lines. What are these? These are nothing but the microaneurysms. And see here at the 1 minute, you can already see there is a late venous phase. You can see the dye leaking out here. And this is again the left eye. You can see some amount of hyperfluorescence elsewhere. And now you can definitely see in the late phase. Why do you call it as a late phase? There is no dye in either the artery or the veins, but definitely you can see there is a leakage in these vessels. So this is nothing but it's a PDR with NVEs. That is neovascularization of the neovascularization elsewhere. So what is this? This is definitely an NVD, and this is how you see the late phase of the angiogram. There is definitely leakage and staining. And what are these hypofluorescent areas? These are nothing but the capillary non-perfusion areas. You can see this hyperfluorescent small dots. What are these? There's nothing but the microaneurysms. And what is this? You can see definitely a clinical picture is given here. And here you can see there is increase in the late phase of the angiogram. There is a leakage of this. What is this? This is the NVE. Now, coming to this, what is this? Again, NVD. But what is this here? You see the second slide, you can definitely see some vessels. I don't know if the picture is clear here. So it is not leaking. There are vessels on the disc, but which is not leaking, which is more looks in the form of collateral vessels. If this was then NVE, it would have leaked, but collaterals do not leak. Okay. Now, coming to the CNVM. So how do you classify CNVM? CNVM is classified as predominantly classic, minimally classic, occult CNVM. This is the fluorescein angiographic classification of CNVM, right? So this is the first thing you can see here. The arteries are already filled. The veins are already filled. So this is the case of midvenous space where you can see there is some hyperfluorescence in here, which is appearing in a lacy pattern. So this is nothing but very characteristic of a classic CNVM. Now coming to the next, what is this? Minimally classic. So in minimally classic, you can see in predominantly classic, it fills more than 50-80% of the lesion. If it fills less than that, then it is called as minimally classic CNVM. So here you can see some amount of hyperfluorescence here. This definitely there is a blood here, which gives a blocked fluorescence. And you can see some amount of hyperfluorescence here, which is less than the 50% of the occupying the lesion. So which is minimally classic. Then comes, what is this? This is FFA. And what is this? This is ICG. I'll come about it a little bit later, but let me describe the FFA here. Again, FFA of the right eye, where you can see in the late phase, there is already some hyperfluorescence, so which is probably the drusen. Drusen, it stains. So it's in the staining phase. That means it's already in the late phase of the angiogram. And definitely you can see some leakage here, but which is not very definite. You cannot see the borders very clearly. But in the ICG, you can definitely see a large area here. So what is this called as? This is nothing but the occult CNVM with a plaque seen on ICG. Okay. So this is a very characteristic fluorescein and the ICG. See here, in the fluorescein angiography, you see the vessels more nicely filled with these dye. Here also you see the dye, but you see the choroidal vessels here. So these are the vessels which are largely seen in ICG. And second most important is look at the disc. The disc always looks hypocyanescent or hypofluorescent on ICG, whereas it always looks hyperfluorescent or sometimes due to staining, it looks hyperfluorescent in the FFA. So here you can see there is stippled hyperfluorescence, but which is not very clear because this is the total amount of blood here. But definitely here you can see this is the blood, but you can see some network, vascular network here, which is nothing but a case of occult CNVM. So ICG plays an important role in distinguishing occult CNVM and PCV. So coming to the next, what is this? This you can see there are two types of occult CNVM you must know. One is type 1, where I have also given you a clue of the OCT, where you can see there is a PED, but you can see it is not very clear. There are some hyperreflective areas inside this PED, which looks more like a fibrovascular PED. So coming to the next, what is this? This is nothing but late leaks. So here what happens in the late leaks? The hyperfluorescence with the pooling of the dye into the sensory, that is a subretinal space at 2 to 5 minutes in the absence of known source of leakage. We are not able to identify the definite source of the leakage. That's why we call them as LLUS, that is late leakage of undetermined source. That is the actual source is not known. So in these cases, ICG also plays an important role. So coming to the next, how do you differentiate whether it's a, so you can also tell whether it's an extrafoveal CNVM, it's more than 200 micron to the center of the fovea. You can call it as a subfoveal if it is directly underneath. You can call it as a juxtafoveal if it is closer than 200 microns to the center of the fovea. Okay, so now let's go to this. What is this? This is again an ICG picture. You can see here the disc is black. You can definitely see the arteries and the veins of the retina filling, but definitely you can see the choroidal veins and the choroidal arteries also here. Basically, it's more of the choroidal veins here because it's at the late phase. So you see small here and you see a big one here. So what's the difference between the two? The small one is nothing but called as the hot spot if it is less than 1 disc diameter. And if it is called as a plaque, if it is more than 1 disc diameter. So again, this is a very favorite question of examiner, difference between hot spot and the plaque. So coming to this, what is this? So here, this is again a fluorescein angiograph of the left eye, where you can definitely see it's a late phase, but this is the case of PED. So you can definitely see the pooling of the dye in the PED, which looks hyperfluorescence. Whereas in the ICG, you can see this is a jet black disc. You can see the choroidal vessels also being prominent, which is definitely means it's an ICG. And PED always looks hypocyanescent or hypofluorescent on ICG. And definitely you can see some blighted hyperfluorescence here, which are nothing but basically the polyps. So this is a case of PCV. So you can see here the nodular hyperfluorescence. You can see here, this is the nodular hyperfluorescence you see here. And definitely what is this? This is nothing but the BVN, that is the branching vascular network. And I'll show you this video of ICGA, dynamic ICGA. If you can see this arrow, there is a pulsating, can you see that? Yeah, there is a pulsating polyp, which can also be seen with a dynamic video monitored ICG. So coming to the next set is the OCT. So I'm not going to deal with all the layers of the OCT, but it's very important for you people to know all the layers, the new layers of the OCT, which have already been described. So coming to the DME. So whenever a case of diabetic macular edema is given, you're defining the disease pattern comes on these 5. So let's go into quickly. What is spongy thickness? So this is, if the OCT is given to you like this, you can see some amount of hyporeflectivity inside the inner retinal layers. So this is a diffuse homogeneous intraretinal swelling with reduced reflectivity, and therefore there is a fluid collection through the neurosensory retina, mainly confined to the outer retina, which is described as the spongy-like thickness. Now comes cystoid spaces. So when you see optically clear cystic spaces in between, and there is a bridging elements in between them, they are nothing but the cystoid spaces. It can occur in the ONL layer or it can occur in the INL layer as well. Sometimes these cysts may coalesce and forms an entire almost retinal thickness can be covered, which is usually called as poor prognosis. They have the poor prognosis. Now, if you see the hyporeflective space here underneath the fovea, so that is nothing but subfoveal serous detachment. Although you can see some amount of cystoid spaces in the ONL layer and also in the INL layer, and this is the subfoveal or the subfoveal fluid or the neurosensory detachment. And then coming to this, you can see the fundus picture here on the right side. You see there is no normal anatomy of the macula at all. You can see the detached retina, which is nothing but called as the tractional retinal detachment, which Dr. Guruprasad Sir nicely showed in his presentation. Now, what is this? You see the retina here, you see the ILM here, which is slightly lifted here, and definitely you can see this hyperreflective layer, which is in the vitreous phase, which is nothing but it's a taut posterior hyaloid membrane. Now, when you classify DME, you have to classify it either as a center involving or the non-center involving. If it is center involving, this is how you can see the large cystoid spaces confined to the center of the fovea. If it is center of the fovea is clear, if it's non-center, this is very important for the basis of the treatment. If it is center involving, we directly start with the anti-VEGF first. If it's non-center involving, either wait or we go according to the laser, according to the ETDRS guidelines. So coming to the next, what are the important features of the DME? Yes, DME, if the OCT is given like this, important points, large cystoid spaces, if you see hard exudates, and you see hyperreflective foci. So a little bit forward, if to take hard exudates, usually they have a back reflecting, they have a shadowing here, whereas hyperreflective spots foci, they do not have shadowing. That is how you differentiate between the hyperreflective foci and the hard exudates. And when you see the subretinal hard exudates here, which clinically says that it's a chronic case or it's a recalcitrant diabetic macular edema. Now, coming to the PED, there are 3 types of PED. I think you all know that. If it's optically empty space and you can see the choriocapillaries in between, beneath that, then it's nothing but the serous PED. That is serous pigment epithelial detachment. But when there is a moderate reflectivity inside appearing and underneath the detachment, and definitely because of the shadowing of the hemorrhage here, you are not able to see the underlying layers here. So this is called as hemorrhagic PED, that is hemorrhagic pigment epithelial detachment, which obscures the underlying choriocapillaries and all the other posterior layers. Now, I have already described what is this. This is nothing but the fibrovascular PED, where you can see there is a pigment epithelial detachment. There you can see there is a vascular network, or further to describe it, it is also called as multilamellar or the multi-layered PED, pigment epithelial detachment. Now, quickly, there are three important signs on OCT to diagnose as PCV. What is one? Thumb-like polyp sign. You see, there is a tall peaked PED, thumb-like polyp sign. The second one is the notch sign, a notch in the PED representing a polyp and the lesion at the margin of the PED. This is the second one. And the third one is the double layer sign, that is DLS. When you see the two hyperreflective areas representing the RPE and the Bruch's membrane, and when you see the difference between them, then it is called as DLS. Ideally, both are confined together. But when you see the difference, two hyperreflective differently, that is what is called as DLS, and which is also one of the pathognomonic sign of PCV on OCT. Now, quickly about the macular hole. I am sure that all of you all know about the macular hole. The staging of the macular hole is very important. I'm not going to go into this in any detail. But the important thing you also need to know, the examiners are fond of asking, is the macular hole formation factor. So how do you do that? The greater arm length on the left side, the greater arm length on the left arm and the right arm length divided by the basal diameter. So that is nothing but, if you see this figure here, C plus D by A, that is the basal diameter. And if it is more than 0.9, it is having good prognosis. If it is having less than that, 0.5, then it is having bad prognosis. Nowadays, it's not very relevant, but still examiners are very fond of asking about the hole formation factor also. And most importantly, you need to know what is the recent advances also. This is the International Vitreomacular Classification Study, where they have given it into VMA, VMT, and full thickness macular hole. So VMA is called as focal if it is less than 1500 micron. If it is called as broad if it is more than 1500 micron. So this is vitreomacular adhesion. Similarly, when there is a traction, when there is pulling, it is called as vitreomacular traction. It is called as focal if it is less than 1500 micron. It is called as broad when it is more than 1500 micron. So this is about VMA and VMT. And again, the hole size, macular hole size, again is described small as 250, medium as 250 to 400, large as more than 400. So quickly going to the next, as you all know, this is nothing but a clear-cut, very simple case of CSR. So what are the types of CNVM on OCT? It's again very important. As angiographically, you describe it as predominantly classic, minimally classic, and occult. In OCT, you described it as type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1, if it is underneath the PED, which is nothing but of occult CNVM. So this is fibrovascular pigment epithelial detachment showing type 1 CNVM. Type 2 is underneath the retina. Please don't get confused. Below the RPE is type 1. Under the retina is type 2, and more inside the retina is type 3. So type 2 is nothing but the classic form of CNVM, which is very responsive to the treatment. And if you give anti-VEGF, they respond very quickly, as unlike type 1 CNVM. And type 3 is inner the retina. So please remember, underneath the RPE, type 1, subretinal type 2, intraretinal type 3, which is usually described as retinal angiomatous proliferation. So coming quickly, 2 slides about the B-scan. You must know it's a highly reflective structure, that is the lens, and then you have the vitreous, which is echolucent. Then comes the retina, choroid, sclera, which are again highly reflective structures. So how do you differentiate between PVD and RD? In the membrane, undulating membrane, you usually see under PVD. You see here, this is after eye movements, you see these movements, undulating movement, but whereas in the RD, you see a very thick movement here and less movement as compared to the PVD after eye ocular movements. And definitely on the A scan, you can definitely see there is a high spike which is corresponding to the retina. Here you can see there is a retinal detachment here, and there is also some layer of hyperreflectivity, hyperechoic signals here, which is nothing but the PVD. So this is RD with PVD. Now, I think I'll just try to play this and show. See here, you can see this video here. So always these kind of B scans are always seen in the after eye movements. And here you can see in this video as well, where you can see, yes, if you can compare the both, this you can see there is more undulation on the right side, but definitely you can see some amount of hyperreflectivity here, which is, hyperechoic signals here, which is nothing but RD, but definitely inside what you see here is the PVD. So coming to the next, retinoblastoma, it's the most common tumor in the children and irregular mass with broad base, and usually you see calcification in these things, which is very pathognomonic USG feature of retinoblastoma, which also shows the high spikes in the A scan. And lastly, the choroidal melanoma, which is always having a collar stud appearance, and these kind of, I think, classic pictures will be given to you in the B scan. You can definitely look into it into more detail. And my last slide is on the vitreous exudates. So vitreous exudate, in case of endophthalmitis, definitely you can see there is membranous type of vitreous echos here, and definitely you have to correlate the surgical situation also if it is post-cataract surgery or post-trauma. And another important is the RC thickening, retinochoroidal thickening. Again, if it is thickened, it's again pathognomonic of endophthalmitis on the ultrasound. So this you can correlate with the history, clinical findings, then that is when you have to establish the diagnosis of endophthalmitis. Lastly, the choroidal detachment here, definitely you can see it's a paired convex echogenic bands extending posteriorly from the ciliary body. It remains fixed in the position during the eye movement, and that is how you differentiate that between retina and the posterior vitreous detachment. Posterior vitreous detachment is highly undulating. Next undulating is retina, whereas choroidal detachments are not undulating, they are almost fixed. And sometimes when you see the both opposing to each other, it's called as oppositional choroidal detachment. So with this, I once again thank the KP sir and all the organizers here, and also Microvision for hosting this wonderful webinar. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. That was quite an exhaustive